Well, good morning, everybody. This is Professor Savini. It's Saturday the 13th. Kind of want to just give you an overview of your first week's real assignment, the plan exercises, and kind of like a segue into Module 2 here. Um, for those of you that are doing the readings and paying attention, you're seeing this connection, right? We're going from why we're studying ethics, um, the importance of studying ethics, and different approaches you can use in making a decision, right? We call that a calculus, right? A rubric. In computer terms, an algorithm, or in mathematical terms, an algorithm, whatever you want to call it. What are the variables that we use to make a decision? And we see this in the work we do day to day. What are those competing ethical models, values, principles, etc. So week one, the plan exercises asked you to basically rank, cultural relativism versus egoism. Okay, and one of you had a very interesting um, juxtaposition of the two, saying they're almost mirror opposites, or on opposite ends of the spectrum. If I don't want to be such an inward thinker, I give up my egoism at the altar and I grab the mantle of cultural relativism to see how others view the world. Almost in a selfless act, right? Conversely, you could do it the other way around too. Um, look at it from the other angle. I need to look out for what's best for me. So, what are the people out there saying? Maybe I look at something differently for me. Um, but really, they are different. Um, you know, many of you see value in both, looking at what's happening in the culture, and also for your self interest. Of course, you know, we all understand that. We are responsible for our own bodies, spiritually, mentally, and physically. They should not be neglected. Um, and I speak in the plural purposefully because oftentimes we just think of the flesh, but it's just not the flesh, it's the mind and the spirit. Um, so there are a couple of you that answered on cultural relativism like a high 10, and you gave egoism a low score. One of you indicated, hey, I've got low self esteem, whatever it is, so I kind of look to others. I want to please others. Well, that's not really healthy. At least not all the time. It's not healthy. Um, so others, one or two others said, really, who cares? It doesn't really make a difference. They kind of wash out the end. I'm not sure how they were really explaining the fact that they didn't see value in either of these things, and that kind of perplexes me even now. So maybe I misunderstood what they were writing. But I just want to, as we segue into the second week, which we're going to talk about, again, decision making in the sense of accounting now, financial reporting, transparency, honesty in accounting, right? What is disclosure? What is adequate disclosure for the user? That kind of stuff. We have to really think carefully. What are we reacting to? Our biases, the biases of others en masse, cultural relativism. Because I proposed to one of you, who was a proponent of cultural relativism being pretty much the guiding principle, if you will, I'm like, okay, well, if cultural relativism as we're seeing it today, in many quarters, there's this idea of censorship happened during even pre-COVID, but during COVID it got very bad, censoring alternative views against the vaccine, censoring those who didn't go with the mainstream media or the certain political agendas. They were deplatformed, they were demonetized, they were debanked, their voices were silenced. Now we're finally finding out their side of the story, and we're seeing that they were not conspiracy theorists at all, they were just critical thinking people. But during that time of cultural relativism, if you denied accepting the vaccine mandate, you were fired in many cases in corporate America and state and local government. You were just fired. If you had religious or moral objections to it, in the federal government, many military were fired. Now they've been rehired. Lawsuits around the country are being given to those who were unjustly treated. But do you know the vast majority of you said nothing? You didn't care about your neighbors losing their jobs. Many of them were painted as being extremists or unpatriotic, and no one said anything. In that sphere of cultural relativism, if we took that model and used it today or in the future, I just asked the question, would that be morally just? In Nazi Germany, it was culturally accepted that if you were gay, a Jew, disabled, or a Roman Catholic, in particular a Polish Roman Catholic, you were lower than dirt, and you could be thrown into a gas chamber, executed with a bullet to the head. You know what the response was of many Germans? We didn't know. We're only following orders. It's what the government said. Kind of like what happened during the COVID and those lockdowns. So cultural relativism can be extremely dangerous if not underpinned by moral values, as any ethical framework could be dangerous. So egoism, same thing, extremely dangerous if it's not grounded. Should we look at them and see where's the popular culture going? Where are my selfish needs telling me to go? Yes, absolutely. But as one of you said so beautifully, I wish I could remember exactly, but you said there needs to be a balance between the two. And don't just do what makes you feel good as an egoist, if you will, or through egoism. And don't just do something to go with the crowd. This person hit it on the head, which means they dig deep. They go to the core values that they have. And that's what you're supposed to uncover in paper one. That ethical framework, those deep down core values, when you're getting tugged by the culture, tugged by your own lust or desire or biases, what brings you back to true north, to your true north, what you believe is good? What are those values? What are those principles? What is that framework? So that's what's really important as we go forward, because corruption, whether it's in politics, from the White House down to your house, it don't matter. Corruption is within us. The reason we have all this, and sad to say, the reason why a young man this week was assassinated, a young lady was murdered, and many other people falsely incarcerated, unjustly treated, It's because we're responsible, either directly or indirectly in most cases, because we don't say anything, we don't object, and I don't mean in violent ways, but we need to object politely, firmly, through critical thinking. So that's the problem. Your readings, this course is to help you see that for us to increase ethics in financial reporting, primarily in our governments, it's got to start with you. Look, you don't have to be a saint, but you have to get up every day and try to do your best. Not just for you or for the crowd, but what's best for everyone. And what's of value are those immutable principles, right, that we live by. We have these inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? These beautiful words. Well, what do they mean? But they don't mean a hell of a lot if we don't empower others to aspire to those through critical thinking and through information. We have to give people information to make decisions. And this is where, when you go into Module 2 and you begin reading Duska, he's going to hit you hard on accounting being a moral practice. And what is he going to also say? Yeah, you can do a checklist and say you've complied, but does a checklist application approach really meet true disclosures? Do you meet the spirit of the standard, right? Or are you just kind of doing the bare minimum? When we set accounting standards, you always tell preparers and auditors, look, standards are the minimum. If an entity wants to disclose more, they can. Auditors don't want more disclosure because why? It's more work for them. Their billing rates have got to go high. They can't go home at 4 o'clock. They have to work until 4:15, that kind of thing. So auditors don't like more disclosures. Preparers certainly don't either. In most cases, they're like, hey, I ain't saying more than I need to. It's basically meeting the bare minimum of the standard. Now, problem is, how good's the standard, right? When I write a standard, it's only as good as the board deliberations and the different political views, and there are, within a board. And I don't mean just politics, but just inherent biases, parochialism. Those politics weigh in and they smooth the language. They change. So, sometimes the standards go out there and they're ambiguous. But you have to go back to the basis for conclusions, and hopefully the basis for conclusions in your standard explains the spirit and the intent of what the standard is trying to say. And if the BFC isn't clear, then you need to go back to the board's concept statement and their framework to see what have they sworn to basically do conceptually. And that might help shed light on the spirit and intent. Problem is, whether it's the BFC or the conceptual framework, they're non-authoritative in almost all cases. I don't think there's any standard setter I've heard that have made those authoritative guidance. So that's what you're going to hit in Duska. What is true disclosure? What is your responsibility as a professional? And one of you wrote that, and you've got experience in public housing, I think, that you've seen all kinds of different things and you've kind of become immune. And I get it. I've been in federal employment since I was a United States Marine, 1980. So you figure those years out. You could do the math. You're accountants. I've seen a lot too. At one point I began getting immune and I started drinking because the world got rocked. And the way I was trying to deal with the insanity of people saying one thing and doing another, I'd come home every night and grab a scotch or two. I always like single malts, they're delicious. But a good Kentucky bourbon is good. Um, One that's got a great price point is Evan Williams. But I digress. I had to catch myself. And because that was making me more immune, more numb to the corruption I saw. So once I stopped doing that, I recentered myself. And I understood if you're doing wrong, you're doing wrong. And I have an obligation, if it's a serious wrong. My moral framework tells me if other people can get hurt, forget me, because I'm going to get hurt no matter what. I'm in it, I'm seeing it. If I report it, it's going to get worse. But one way or the other, I'm going to suffer. Even if I don't say anything, because inside I start to die. Okay? At least I would. So once I stopped the drinking and recentered myself and went back to those values and principles I had, I built the ethical muscle and I did what I needed to do. And I can tell you this a little later what the story is. It involved a private investigator. Child pornography was involved, not on my part, but on the part of the perpetrator. And it got ugly. In the end, all I can say is I did what was ethical. I paid a price, but it was a price well worth it. Why? Because I'm a certified public accountant, but before that, I believe that I have an obligation to all of you in society to be honest and truthful in the work that I do. So that's where we're going to take you through Boss and Duska. And before I close this little mini lecture, I'm going to challenge some of you who are studying accounting are doing it for the wrong reason. But if you're going to practice accounting, be honest, okay? Otherwise, pick another profession. We're already suffering enough in accounting where we don't need more boneheads out there doing boneheaded work, okay? Because it makes it harder for the rest of us. And for the rest of us, if you got boneheads, maybe it's time to do a little cracking of the boneheads, and doing what you can to give them an attitude adjustment where you get rid of them. But we have to start policing ourselves first, inside, and then we can police those that work with us or for us in our environment. That's the most important message. We're not going to get rid of corruption in accounting or in our government, in our families, anywhere, unless we get rid of it within us first. Think about that this weekend, and if you have any questions, contact me. But for those of you that are really doing the readings and participating, this class is going to open you up, I'm telling you. And because I get feedback from past students who stay in contact with me. And, not all, of course, because a lot of you kind of fake it to make it. But those of you who are really serious, you're going to really enjoy the class. Thank you. You got my number. You know where to reach me. Make sure to use the Rutgers Canvas account, dominic.savini@rutgers.edu, when you send in your plant exercises. I just want to keep them all in one place, okay? That's it. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Okay, stay strong, stay in your faith, and find out who you are, and let's deal with your biases, and let's deal with your fears. Let's take care of those, because once we unleash you into the accounting profession, we want you to be a tiger. We want you to do the best you can, all right? Be good. Talk to you later.